All right, hello everyone. Thank you, Jeanette, for the introduction. Thank you to the rest of the production team who makes it possible for me to stand on this very bright stage. My name is Alaina Mupparthi. I have been a GDSE lead at the Rochester Institute of Technology, or RIT, for the past 2 years, as well as a Women Tech Maker Ambassador here in Santa Clara. I kind of hop from coast to coast, so this is really exciting. I was actually at the first NA Connect 2 years ago in 2022, so definitely really amazing to be speaking at one 2 years later. Now, I know that there's been some really great technological advancements that we've been seeing over the past few days at I.O. as well as here. This last demo was so cool. I can't wait to tell my kids in the future, did you know I was actually there at the I.O. when they announced all this stuff? Yeah, I was alive before Astra existed, by the way. But it's very, very exciting. But at the end of the day, a lot of us are community organizers. And so I thought that it would be apt for me to talk about event planning. And obviously, the name is pretty self-explanatory, from concept to celebration. But I'm going to be talking about how you kind of take an event from ideation all the way through to wrap up, and what that really means, just my tips and tricks. Basically, this is just me dumping on you some things that I've learned through trial and error over the past 2 years, and hoping that they help you out. So first, here is a graphic that was given to me by Krish. He's actually here in the audience, so shout out to him. He's a former GDSE lead. But this kind of goes through the whole timeline of what event planning looks like. I know there's a lot of words here on the screen, but I'm going to be talking about them as we go on, so you don't have to worry about trying to absorb it all right now. It starts with ideation, which is basically just coming up with the idea. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because we have ourselves, our teams. Usually the problem isn't coming up with the idea, but it's how to actually execute it. So I'm going to be spending more time on the planning part, the execution part, and the wrap-up part, which I know some people were kind of giving me quizzical looks about, what are you really going to talk about? But I actually feel like that's one of the most important parts to ensuring success for your future events. So first, I will be talking about the planning part. I know that my slides are very text heavy, but I'll try to kind of make it a little bit more digestible, so I'll stand under what I'm talking about. But number one when it comes to planning is marketing. People aren't going to come to your event if you haven't marketed it. So to kind of start off, I would recommend polling your community. For example, at a university level where we have a lot of gamers, something like Discord and kind of advertising that there's pizza at our event is going to draw a lot of college students in. But if you're in maybe a community of some young working professionals, maybe Discord isn't the way to go. Maybe Slack or LinkedIn is the way to go. And advertising a networking event at the end of your session is what's going to draw students in or attendees in. And so kind of figuring out what your community works well with and what you want to deliver to your community is the way that you want to do marketing. And then I also have something here at the bottom. It says marinating time. And this is really important. If I tell you that I'm giving a talk tomorrow and I want you all to be there, chances are none of you can make it because I didn't give you enough prior notice. But if I tell you, hey, 3 months in advance, I'm going to have a talk in September, and I'm going to remind you every month, and then during September, I'm going to remind you every week, you're more likely to have time to put it on your calendar and to be there. So make sure that you give that marinating time to your attendees. It also allows for word of mouth, because if you are kind of advertising your event to students or to attendees who are in a certain niche, then they also know attendees in that niche, and they're going to kind of draw them in to come in to your event. Next are the 4 essentials of any kind of planning event. They are location, so figuring out your location. I know that for GDSE leads, your university is kind of the place that you usually have it. For non-GDSE leads, if you're having trouble with your venues, definitely connect with a GDSE lead in your area because they have access to auditoriums and things like that completely for free. So that can be your place. Also, I'm going to be focusing a little bit on hybrid events. So if you're completely online, then make sure you decide which streaming service or which platform you want to be on. That kind of leads us into the next point. If you're using Meet versus Bevy versus Zoom, they all have completely different services. It's way different to set up a breakout room in Google Meet than it is on Zoom. So make sure that you know which one you're comfortable with or which one you need to learn before your event. And then food and swag are kind of interchangeable, right? Sometimes if you're having a lunchtime event, you're going to spend more on catering, and that means you're going to need to maybe have smaller swag. Versus if you're having like a snack time event and you have light refreshments, then maybe you can afford to go big on the swag. And so depending on what your community maybe is drawn to, you're going to have to make those decisions with your team. And then finally, funding, which I know everyone is, it's always on top of mind. So there's a couple of things here, but I actually have our own dedicated slides for that because it's such a big topic that I want to talk about. But there's obviously always the event sponsorship from Google. There's the event support form like I was talking about. And there's also material sponsorships from external organizations. So I'm going to get into that on the next slide here. So everyone knows this event support form. If you're not familiar, this is the one that the Google communities provide us. It's on the Community Leads platform, and it helps you, get swag, get catering, get food. But in the event that that's not enough, you can also look to your communities for help, external outside of Google. So first, we're going to talk about within the local community. Now, I know there's a couple of logos here. You may or may not recognize them, but these are just specific to me. So at the top, we have 3 of the clubs that are within our university campus who each get their own budget and their own funding from the university. And so collaborating with them not only brings new members to our club and new members to theirs, but it also lets us combine resources, combine budgets, and whatnot. So that can be something that's very, very siloed on a university level. Next, if we want to go outside of the local community, that can mean some larger organizations that are really interested in the mission of GDSC. Or maybe you guys have something in common. Maybe you're hosting an International Women's Day event, and you want to partner with Girls Who Code, who's always really interested in that. They have their own funding, things like that. And then finally, obviously, with Google developers, within other categories or other communities here, there's always some room for collaboration, whether that be, hey, we have some swag left over from our next event, or hey, we have a speaker who's really interested in talking at your event, anything like that. Resources don't always have to be monetary. They can also be in the form of support. They can be in the form of membership. They can be the form of swag or food. And so basically, collaborating with your other communities is kind of what I'm getting at. Really great idea. And it allows your events to reach a larger audience and be better than you could have imagined. OK. Now I'm going to be moving into the actual execution phase. This is a picture from the first NA Connect. I know some people are smiling. So that was really great. But this is going to be basically being where your feet are during the event. What do you want to do while you're actually there, right? You've planned. You've done all this work with your team. How do you make sure that it goes pretty smoothly? Now, because of the time constraint, I'm only going to be talking about the hybrid model, solely because that's kind of a little bit of a gray area. People know what works in in-person. People know what works in online formats. But the hybrid format is just kind of this unknown area. So I'm going to be talking about my 2 biggest tips for that specific format. If you have any questions, crowdsource, talk to me afterwards about any of the other formats. So my first biggest tip for in-person is to push exclusivity. And what I mean by that is when you're initially marketing your event, and maybe you want people to show up in person more, but you also want to offer it virtually for the people who maybe can't travel that day, or you want to offer it to a wider range of people in a larger radius in miles or kilometers if you're from Canada. So if you are while you're marketing your event, you want to be pushing in-person exclusivity. What I mean by that is you can start off by saying, here are the perks. Here's this event. Here are the perks of coming in person. If you come in person, you get this early swag bag. If you come in person, you get to access this networking event that's going to be in person only. If you come in person, you're going to have lunch provided to you or something like that, so that when people are maybe making the decision between whether or not they want to come in person or hybrid, you make that decision easy for them if it's a possibility for them to attend in person. You can also, I know I have invite only here, and what I mean by that is not restricting who's allowed to come, but sending out a personalized invitation to all of your attendees. That can literally just mean spam emailing your entire bevy attendees list with a personalized name and saying, congratulations, you've been invited to our next event. Here's your personalized voucher code. Only because it makes the people in your community feel a little bit more individualized, feel a little bit more special, feel a little bit more seen, and you're likely to go to an event if you've been invited personally, rather than if you just see it on a newsletter or if you just see it on a Discord channel. So I know that if I got an email saying, hey, you got invited to this event, I would be a lot more likely to go. On the flip side of things, there's always students or attendees who have to attend virtually, and my one rule, if I have to boil it down, would be make it as close to being in person as possible. What I mean by that is take small, tangible decisions that make sure that everyone who is online can kind of experience as much as possible as being in person. For example, if I'm online, if I was also on a Zoom right now and somebody asked me a question, I would say, thank you so much for the question. For those of you online, here was the question. And then I would answer it. Just because those are people not hearing questions because they're online are totally avoidable things when you have practiced, when you've made efforts to be inclusive for everyone who's online, things like that. I also want to say I'm from RIT, which holds the National Technical Institute for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and so we have to have an interpreter at every one of our events. That also means spotlighting your interpreter so that if you're screen sharing, the interpreter doesn't disappear, and everyone who's online can still hear what I'm saying, can still understand what I'm saying. And so basically, try to be inclusive for the people who are online. For those who can't come, then you want to record your event and you want to release it. Not only does this make sure that more people are included in your event, but it can also provide a frame of reference for other people to look at and say, oh wow, actually this event looked really cool. Next time when there's another event, I'm definitely going to be there. So these are all some great tips for being on in hybrid. Now for you, make sure to take care of yourself. When you're at the event, this is something that you've been planning for weeks, usually months on end. You're very stressed. This project is your baby. You want it to go really well. But at the end of the day, you want to remember that nothing is going to go perfectly and that it's important to take care of yourself. Sometime earlier today, I know someone said there's a reason why they ask you to put the oxygen mask on before helping others on an airplane. And that's because you can't run successfully, or you can't run a team successfully if you yourself aren't in your best spirits. So something else that I said was only you and your team know how the event was supposed to go, but your attendees at the end of the event take away a positive experience if that's what you make it. So if you, kind of are flexible, you remain adaptable, you go with the flow, your break turned out to be too long or your speaker came too late, okay, we're gonna move into a different activity. We're gonna do, a crowd work activity or something like that. So making sure to take care of yourself, and also communicating that to your team. My first International Women's Day conference that I held, I kind of took on all of the responsibilities myself, and during my opening ceremony, I was also on the phone with the caterers because there was a problem with the food, and I was also trying to get our tech check set up, and it was just a big disaster because I had taken too much of it on myself, and I didn't communicate it with my team because I wanted them to think that everything was okay. But my second International Women's Day, it was a lot better because I had given each person, all the problems that I had taken from the previous year. I'd said, okay, my treasurer on my team, he's going to be responsible for taking care of the food. So he's going to call them, he's going to bill them, he's going to pick it up, and if there's any problems, that will be on him. Someone else will be a moderator. I'm not going to be on Zoom at the same time that I'm also running the event, that I'm also doing something else. So that person is going to be answering questions in the chat and organizing breakout rooms and whatnot. And not only did that help take a little bit of pressure off of everyone, because it doesn't feel like everyone doesn't know what to do, but also when there were positives to the event, everyone felt like they had a stake. Like they said, hey, at the end of the day, I was responsible for making this part of the event successful, and it provided them a lot more gratification for being part of the event. And then wrap up, coincidentally, I also need to wrap up, getting close to time. This is really important. I know that everyone, kind of just leaves this to the end. They just, send out the post-event survey and they call it a day. But I feel like wrap up is really important because it sets you up for success for all future events. So at the end of your event, take a minute to thank yourself, to be grateful that you were in the opportunity to, bring this kind of content to your community. And don't be disappointed if the event didn't go the way that you intended it to go. If you expected 400 attendees to show up and 4 showed up, that's not a bad thing because you still positively affected those 4 attendees, and that is a win. You want to make sure to thank yourself for being involved, for having the dedication for that. You also want to thank everyone else who was involved. So, production, tech check, speakers, whatnot. Something that I do is I always thank my community, and then I also send out a feedback form telling them to kind of, hey, let me know what went well, what didn't go well, but also give me a positive note about what you liked about our speakers. And then when I go to thank my speakers, I say, hey, thank you so much for speaking. We really appreciated you. Here are some positive things that students had to say. And that goes a long way for kind of fostering those connections a lot farther. And then finally, post-event, you want to make sure that you fill out, all the regular bureaucratic, post-event survey and stuff. Something else that I do is I record all of the wins that we have from each event on a document that I don't share with my team. It's personal, but I, individualize, so-and-so, you did this, and this really helped with our event. So-and-so, you did this helped, our attendees had this to say. And then at the end of every single semester, I have a team lunch with my team, and then I kind of surprise them, and I said, here are our numbers, here are the events, here are some really positive things that you did that had an impact. And that really helps with kind of boosting morale, kind of encouraging everyone to be a part of the next event. And so now I am an event organizer. I'm not a great slideshow presenter, so I don't have a conclusion slide. So I'm just going to say thank you for listening. Here are my LinkedIn and my Google developer profile if you want to connect with me or talk with me afterwards. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Thank you.